Hey everyone, and welcome to a deep dive all about biodiversity and ecosystems. We're going to be taking a look at Chapter 8, uh,
Sorry.
Chapter 8, and we're really going to be focusing on, I guess you could say, the state of things. Like, where is global biodiversity right now? What's the big picture? And
Yeah.
then, what are these ecosystem functions and services? Like, beyond the pretty scenery, right?
Mm.
What are they actually doing for us? And then, are there things happening to turn the tide? Like, are there actual conservation and restoration efforts that are giving us some hope for the future? So that's kind of where we're headed today. So it's not all doom and gloom. It's going to be a realistic look at how interconnected everything is and what's being done to protect the planet.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really fascinating to look at some of these less obvious connections and to see how much we actually rely on these intricate systems.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start with that reality check. Our sources say that 1 million species are at risk of extinction. 1 million.
Mm.
When I first read that, I pictured like some rare insect in a jungle somewhere.
Well, okay.
But it's so much bigger than that, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, for sure. We're talking about rhinos, bluefin tuna, even those, kind of strange pangolins. All these creatures we've heard about are on the brink, and it's not a natural process happening at this rate.
Right. So what's driving this decline then?
Well, human activity is the main culprit. Habitat destruction, pollution, overfishing. It's almost like we're pulling these threads out of a tapestry. And who knows when the whole thing might unravel.
That's a really good analogy, actually.
Yeah.
And our sources talk about the Amazon rainforest as like a prime example of this impact. It's home to 10% of the world's known species, which is mind-blowing. But it's also lost like 17% of its forest cover in just 50 years. So that's a massive chunk of what's called the lungs of the earth. What happens if that starts to fail?
Well, the implications are huge. I mean, the Amazon plays this critical role in regulating global climate and producing oxygen. Deforestation at this scale,
Yeah.
just accelerates climate change, disrupts these weather patterns worldwide. And that's not even to mention the loss of all those species that live there.
Yeah, it's hard to even grasp the ripple effect. It really highlights how interconnected everything is. So beyond the tragedy of losing species, what are we losing in terms of what these ecosystems actually do for us?
Right. Well, that's where the idea of ecosystem services comes in. These are the benefits we get from having healthy ecosystems, the things we often just totally take for granted.
Okay, so like clean air and water.
Yeah, for sure. But it goes way beyond that.
Okay, give me some examples.
Well, let's think about climate regulation for a second. Forests are incredible carbon sinks. They absorb all that CO2 from the atmosphere, so they're key players in fighting climate change. And then there's disease control. Healthy ecosystems keep those pests and disease outbreaks in check.
So like disrupting natural habitats could create ideal conditions for diseases to spread, even to humans.
Exactly. It's messing with the balance of nature, and it can have these unintended consequences. We can't forget about pollination either. The decline of pollinators like bees, which we need for our food.
Yeah.
It's a direct result of losing habitat and using pesticides. So it's not just about saving the bees, it's about understanding that their fate is tied to the health of these ecosystems.
Right. It shows how much we rely on this intricate web. Our sources also mentioned a detail about coral reefs. A 1 degree Celsius rise in temperature can cause mass coral bleaching. And this isn't some far-off threat, right? It's affecting 25% of marine life right now. What does that loss mean for the planet?
Well, coral reefs are called the rainforests of the sea for a reason. They support so much marine life and provide these services like coastal protection and fisheries. Losing these vibrant ecosystems, it's devastating not just for marine biodiversity, but for the millions of people who rely on them too.
Yeah, it's a stark reminder of the interconnectedness of it all and how much we depend on these systems. But it's not all doom and gloom, right? There are people doing incredible things to protect and restore these ecosystems. So let's dive into that next.
Sounds good. I'm excited to share some of the amazing work that's happening around the world.
Me too.
Yeah.
We've talked about some pretty heavy stuff. Extinction, deforestation, losing these local ecosystems. It can feel overwhelming, honestly. But I'm curious, how do scientists even track these changes, especially with so many species at risk?
Yeah, it's a huge task. But thankfully, technology is really helping us monitor biodiversity and understand the impact we're having. One of the most powerful tools is satellite imagery.
Oh, well, from space.
Exactly. From space, we can track deforestation in real time, see how land use is changing, even map entire ecosystems and animal migration patterns.
It's like having eyes in the sky watching over the planet. But on the ground, research is still essential, right?
Oh, absolutely. Field researchers are vital for gathering data. and, observing those changes up close. But they're also benefiting from new technology, things like acoustic sensors that can identify species by their calls, camera traps capturing images of those elusive animals, and drones that can survey these vast areas. It's a really cool combination of traditional field work and cutting-edge tech.
Our sources mention DNA analysis too.
Mm.
Scientists can now extract DNA from environmental samples, like water or soil, to identify species.
It's true. It's called environmental DNA or eDNA analysis, and it lets us detect the presence of species even if we can't see them. Really useful for aquatic ecosystems and tracking those rare species.
So we're getting a much clearer picture of what's out there and how things are changing. But how do we know if these conservation efforts are actually working?
Well, that's the goal, right? To see a positive impact. And that's where data analysis comes in. Scientists use all that info from monitoring programs to track changes in population sizes, assess habitat quality, even measure genetic diversity over time. By analyzing these trends, we can see if conservation strategies are actually effective.
So it's about adapting and improving based on the evidence.
Exactly. It's called adaptive management, constantly learning and refining our strategies. And tech plays a key role in that.
All this research and conservation must be expensive.
Yeah.
Where does the funding come from?
It's a mix of sources: governments, international organizations, private foundations, and increasingly individual donors. We're also seeing these innovative financing mechanisms pop up, like conservation bonds and payments for ecosystem services, where communities or businesses invest in conservation and get returns based on the environmental benefits.
So people are realizing that protecting nature is an investment in our well-being.
Exactly. Healthy ecosystems give us clean water, fertile soil, climate regulation. These are things that would be incredibly costly to replace.
It makes sense. It's about safeguarding these systems that support all life. But with all this data and research, how do we communicate the importance of biodiversity to everyone else?
That's a great point. We can have all the data in the world, but if people don't understand or feel connected to the issue, it's hard to create change.
So how do we bridge that gap then?
Storytelling is powerful. Sharing those stories of successful conservation, highlighting the beauty of nature, connecting with people emotionally. These are all important strategies.
Making it relatable.
Yeah, and showing how these issues impact our daily lives.
Because at the end of the day, conservation isn't just about science and data. It's about people and our relationship with the natural world.
Exactly. Fostering that sense of wonder and appreciation for nature, that's key to inspiring action.
I love that. We've talked about challenges, solutions, technology, communication. What about the future of conservation? What's coming next? So we've uncovered some incredible conservation efforts already, but I'm really curious, like, what does the future hold? What are some of those emerging trends that could change how we approach protecting biodiversity?
Well, one trend that's gaining momentum is artificial intelligence. AI. Scientists are developing algorithms that can analyze massive data sets, all this environmental info, satellite imagery, species observations, climate data, all of it.
So it's like a supercomputer helping us understand these complex relationships.
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it. AI can predict things like where deforestation might happen, or identify areas where endangered species are most vulnerable, even model how invasive species might spread. It's giving conservationists these powerful tools to make better decisions.
It's almost like giving them a glimpse into the future of these ecosystems. What other innovations are out there?
Another fascinating area is synthetic biology, which involves using genetic engineering to tackle conservation problems.
Synthetic biology? That sounds kind of sci-fi. How does that even work?
Imagine using genetic engineering to create coral reefs that are resistant to bleaching, or developing these biopesticides that target invasive species without harming native wildlife.
Wow, that's incredible, but also a little scary. Are there ethical concerns with this kind of technology?
For sure. Synthetic biology is powerful, and we have to be cautious, really think about the benefits and the risks. Open discussions about the ethical implications are so important.
It's like with any powerful tool. We have a responsibility to use it wisely. But shifting gears a bit, what about the human element in all of this? How can we get more people involved in protecting biodiversity?
Well, there's this movement focused on reconnecting people with nature. The idea is that if people actually experience the beauty of the natural world, they'll be more likely to want to protect it.
It's hard to care about something you've never seen or experienced firsthand, right?
Yeah.
So how do we foster that connection?
There are lots of ways: creating more green spaces in cities, encouraging outdoor recreation, and incorporating nature-based education in schools. It's about fostering that sense of wonder and appreciation for nature from a young age.
Those are great ideas. As we wrap up this deep dive, it's clear that we've covered a lot, from the alarming state of biodiversity to all these amazing solutions being developed. But what's the one key takeaway you want our listeners to remember?
I think it's that we have the knowledge, the technology, and the resources to make a real difference. But in the end, the future of biodiversity depends on all of us. It requires a change in how we think and act, recognizing that we're a part of nature, not separate from it.
And that our actions have consequences for the whole web of life. What can our listeners do to help? It can feel overwhelming to know where to start.
There are so many ways to get involved. Support conservation organizations, make sustainable choices in your own life, speak up for environmental policies, and most importantly, stay informed and engaged.
It's a good reminder that every action, no matter how small, can contribute to a healthier planet.
That's right. Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into biodiversity and ecosystems.
We've explored the challenges, the successes, and all those innovations shaping the future of conservation. Hopefully you're leaving today feeling informed, inspired, and ready to make a difference.
Thanks for joining us. Until next time, keep exploring, stay curious, and remember the future of our planet is in our hands.